Hello everyone and welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. This is a first for me, so please be kind. I recently had an absolute ball chatting with the incredible Suzi Mosley Payne on her podcast Transform Your Career Success. We talked about career development, especially for people who might be feeling a bit stuck in their career and don't know where to start. There's hints and tips in there around broadening your job search, how to utilise your network, and how to check whether an organisation's culture matches with your own values. I hope you'll find some interesting nuggets of information in here and really enjoy the session.
Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transform Your Career Success. I'm Suzi Mosley Payne, and you're listening to the show that is for you if you are an ambitious career woman or you are feeling stuck in a rut in your career and you want more fulfillment, more success, and to grab hold of your own career path. Today, we've got an incredible interview for you. I'm joined by the amazing Tracy Holland. Tracy is a business change specialist, and I'm so excited to have you here with me, Tracy, because the topics that we've chosen, they're going to be so impactful and powerful to the audience. So before I give a little bit of game away around what we're going to cover, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your business and how you work with businesses and career women from a change perspective.
Thanks, Suzi. I'm really thrilled to be here, really excited to have a chat with you. So yeah, as you say, I'm Tracy Holland. I've been about 30 odd years in the change space. So I've worked for loads of different organisations, large corporations like Xerox and Santander, in big organisations such as the DWP, in higher education. I've worked for small companies, third sector, you name it, I've probably worked there, and always in a change space and a changing environment, which is something that I really love. And earlier on this year, I made the giant leap to hand my notice in on my really stable, permanent, full-time job and set up my own business, which is called Reforge Change. And what we do there is I help businesses to work out what their strategy is for transformation and change, be that growth or acquiring new organisations and businesses or doing something different, new products and services. I also help to implement those changes. And then I also have a mentoring arm to the business, which is both for businesses and individuals who are either going through a change or wanting to make a change.
Amazing. You've got an incredible business, and it's so interesting because there's so many synergies in your background in change and my background in business transformation. Yeah. So the topic of today's interview then is really powerful. So we are talking to you, audience, if you are feeling stuck in a rut. Maybe you've been with an organisation for quite a while and a change is being enforced on you. So maybe you're facing redundancy, or maybe in your heart, you know that you've stayed in your role or in your company a little bit too long, and you just know that you need a change, but you either don't know what steps to take, what change to make, and what new career or role to go for, or you don't have the confidence to make the move. So between me and Tracy today, we're going to cover that for you. We want to get you out of your own way. We want you to get you feeling clear on what your goals are and where you're headed. And we want to give you the confidence to go after those goals and go for that new role or that new organisation or new career path, whatever it is. We want you going for that with confidence and conviction and excitement for what the future is going to hold for you.
Definitely.
How's it sound, Tracy? Have I covered everything there?
Yeah, perfect. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who are maybe in an organisation where they feel comfortable, but they're just not getting that much more fulfillment. They're not having the challenge that they want, but they're a bit nervous to take that change. And I think without having a bit of a roadmap or a bit of some hand holding, that can be really daunting. So I think some hints and tips that we can give here, a bit of guidance, will really help people to start that conversation with themselves and think about what they might want to do next.
I agree. It's incredibly daunting leaving a role that you've been in a while or an organisation that you've worked for a while. It is really daunting stepping into the unknown, but the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. That cliche quote, but it is so true, isn't it? It is so true. And you don't know until you try. And a new chapter, a new challenge is never a bad thing. You can never make the wrong move, because the amount of lessons that are going to come from that are always going to be positive. And you've got the power to make another change. If the move that you make as a next step isn't the right one for you, maybe it's a stepping stone to something better. So where shall we start then, Tracy? What do you think? Shall we start with, you go. So
what I like to do at the beginning is work out what I know about myself. What's my baseline? So what do I like doing? What kind of things do I accept you have to do in every job, but I don't really like it and I'd like to keep that to a minimum? Everyone always says admin. But, what are those things that I really would like to keep to the bare minimum if I could? And then what are like my red lines in terms of a job? So if the job contained X, I'm an immediate no, I'm out, I don't want to do it. What I also do, though, is then get under the skin of that a little bit, because it's all right knowing what you like to do in connection with the job you already do, but why do you like to do that? So sometimes people will say, oh, I like to work on a team, or I like to work with customers. Right, why do you like doing that? What is it that it gives you? What's that sense of satisfaction? What kind of interactions you have? What skills is it using? What experience is it building? Because the world of work in the last 15 years, Suzi, has absolutely changed, hasn't it? I have done jobs that didn't exist 20 years ago. So if you've been stuck in your role for a long time, your view of what is available and what you might be able to do might be quite narrow. So if you really get under the skin of why do you like doing that and why don't you like doing that? What skills is it? And really get it down to a skills and experience, the type of things that you like doing, the tasks, the activities, then you can start thinking, I now want to look for something that really maximizes these kinds of skills. And you're not looking for a replica of the job you've got now that's just a bit different, which is a trap that sometimes people who've been in a role for a long time fall into.
I agree. And I would say as well, radiate towards your strengths and what really energizes and lights you up. I'm not saying forget about the weaknesses that you have, because we all have them, but don't dwell on them and don't make those your priority. Don't let those be the things that sap your confidence. Rather, remember how good you are at the things that are in your wheelhouse, your unique areas of expertise that make you, and really lean on those as you're looking for your next role, because radiating towards areas where you're strong or areas that really energize and you know that you enjoy, like you say, Tracy, it's a great place to start.
But you can be quite self-limiting in the jobs that you're familiar with. So one of the other things that I get people to do is just have a look at some job sites, have a look on LinkedIn. Just look for jobs in Sheffield or jobs in communication or whatever, but keep your search terms quite broad and just have a look at what those jobs are that are coming up, because there might be titles that you're not familiar with because you're in a different sector or they're newer roles. But actually, when you look at the requirements for those roles, you might have loads of those skills already. So it might be that it gives you an opportunity to think about going in a different direction that you wouldn't know about unless you knew what was out there. And like we say, when we're talking about people who've been in a similar role or a similar organisation for a long time, you don't know what's going on out there, and you do need to educate yourself and find out what it is. And I think that's a key thing for people to put a bit of time and effort in, to then be able to understand where do you want to channel that energy, where do you want to go, where might your next move lie, really.
I agree 100%. The other thing is, if you haven't moved around a lot, you might not have a really big network. So like in today's market, having a network of contacts in different industries or organizations is really super helpful, and there is a lot of power in that. And also having a network of recruiters who you've contacted previous, that's really powerful. But if you have worked in an organisation or role for a long time, you won't have that. So what can someone in that position do you think, Tracy, to come that constraint of not having that network ready to go?
I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because we do all have a network, and it's how willing you are to talk to your network about your current situation. I'm a parent. I used to take my son to school when he was in the infant school, and lots of the other parents work in different areas and different organisations, and just having a chat and just dropping into the conversation. By the way, I'm thinking of changing roles. What is it that you do? Where do you work? Do you really like it? Do you enjoy it? What kind of roles are available there? Making use of that network that you already have, but to, in a genuine way, tell people what you're doing, because people genuinely and honestly want to help you, but they don't know that you need help unless you tell them. So I think that's one way of using your network a little bit more cleverly in the people that you already know. The other things that you can do are, a couple of people that I'm working with at the moment want to move into a different sector, and they've got experience in one industry and they just want to move into a different sector, and they don't really have the contacts or the networks there. And it's interesting, 2 women last week, I've identified 2 advisory boards, one each that they could join, that has people on those boards that work in the sector that they want to go for, and they have the skills that advisory board is looking for. So another way is to do voluntary work, or those advisory boards, get on the school governors if you've got children at school, or think about other ways that you can broaden your network and meet people from other areas that maybe work in the area or the industry that you work in. You can chat to them, find out what it is that they'd be looking for if they were recruiting someone, see how closely your skills match, where might you need to do some development. And it's just about telling people what you're doing. And honestly, I do it all the time and it never feels weird. And people don't say, you can't talk to me about work, I'm a parent at school, you must only talk about our children. People don't do that. They are willing to help and want to know more about you. People are curious. So it's really useful to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing is, if you've got people in your network that are already working in similar organisations to where you want to go, ask for them to sponsor an introduction for you. You don't have to start from scratch with these things. I think if you do know people who know of someone and can just help open the door for you and introduce you in there, then that's really powerful as well. And
that's how we met, isn't it?
Yeah, it is through an introduction, exactly, and it is really powerful. So don't shy away from that. Like you say, people do genuinely want to help you. You're not bothering them, you're not taking their time in a negative way. It lights someone up to be able to help someone else in their careers. So just remember that, and don't feel like you're being a burden when you're reaching out and asking for that help. It's a strength to do that, for sure.
Definitely.
The other thing that I wanted to cover is, when you are looking for an organisation to move to, when you've been in an organisation a while and you're used to the culture and the values and the way that organisation works, another thing that is very daunting is, am I going to join the right company that is a right fit for me? So let's talk a little bit around the values of that future organisation that you're looking to apply for a role at, and how you can investigate the culture and whether it's going to be a good fit for you. So talk a little bit around that.
Yeah, we were talking, weren't we, before? I applied for a job in an organisation that definitely was my type on paper. The role looked really exciting, spoke to some of my strengths, but it also gave me some challenge, some room to grow, an upskill, and it felt like the perfect role for me. And I applied for the job, I was successful, got the job, and I was absolutely miserable. And it took me a minute to work out why, because this job was definitely my match on paper. If it were on Tinder, I'd be swiping right. It was definitely a match for me. But it took me a minute to work out why, and it was because the lived values of that organisation just didn't gel with mine. And the things that I hold dear to my heart just weren't demonstrated in that organisation, and it felt very stressful to be in that situation. So I think you need to check in with what your own values are, and that was a little bit about know yourself. So what are my values? What things are important to me? Is it the sector? Is it having autonomy? Is it the type of work that they do? Is it diversity, or do I need a greater level of flexibility in my life right now? And it is really important to revisit those because our lives change and our requirements for what we want in a role and our values also change as well. Because what was really important to me 10 years ago when my son was 4 is less important now that he's 14, and will be even less important in 10 years' time when he's 24, because I'll have a completely different home life. So it is really worth checking in and just revisiting what those values are. And I think there's some ways you can check out what you think of companies and what it's like to work there. My number one recommendation is stalk them. So do you know anyone who works there? Do you know anyone who knows anyone who works there? Do you have any connections with anybody who, what do they say about that organisation? Is it a great place to work? Do they seem happy in their job? What does the company say about themselves? Because if they say something, believe them and make sure that you are checking in with, are they things that you believe in too? Have they got things on their website? What do they really emphasize on their adverts? What are they posting about on LinkedIn? If something like being part of a community and doing works in the community and giving back is really important to you, are they showing their staff doing volunteer days on their LinkedIn? Do they seem to have a lot of part-time staff, or does everybody you look at on LinkedIn who works there, are they all full-time and have all worked there for 15 years? And it gives you a really good indication of what are they saying, and then what is it that you're looking at? Is that what's really coming through as their values? Have a look at, if say you've got an interview and you've got the names of the people who you're going to be interviewed by, have a look on LinkedIn, see where they came from. Have they got a career in very organised, structured, regimented organisations, and now they work there and they've worked there for 5 years? Is that the kind of organisation you want to work in? It might be, or it might not, and that might have a bit of a red flag for you, and you might want to do a bit more sleuthing. I think there's lots of stuff you can do in an interview as well, which people don't always think about interviews as being two-way. People very much, when I talk to them, are like, oh, I've gone for this interview, I hope they like me and I need to sell myself. Yeah, they need to sell themselves to you as well. You need to make sure that this is going to be a place that you're going to fit in.
100%.
Yeah. There was a little thing a few years ago about, what questions to ask at the end of an interview to impress. No, use the space to ask the questions that you really want to know the answers to. They're going to tell you something about what it's like to work there. That's actually what the space for the questions is for. So don't fake the questions, because as an interviewer, you can tell if somebody's asking something they don't really want to know the answer to. They're just asking because they think it sounds impressive. But things that I tend to ask is, if they haven't told you already, like, how's this vacancy come about? What happened? Was there a previous post holder? What happened to them? Did they get promoted? Have they gone maternity leave? Have they retired? Or is this a new role that you've created because the company's growing? How many new roles are you creating? Try to get a sense of what's happening in that organisation, because that will give you a sense of where they're going and whereabouts they are on their journey, and whether that's something you feel comfortable with. Do you want to work in a new startup that this is the first time that anybody's ever done this role? Or would you feel better in an established role, depending on where you are in your career? If you've stalked them on LinkedIn, you'll know how long they've worked there. So if they're a recent joiner, ask them what attracted them to the role. Ask them, why did they apply to this company? And what has really surprised them as they've joined the organisation? Or what do they feel what do they love about working there? You also want to understand about the role as well. What would they say would be the greatest challenge in this role? What is something that you're really going to want to be able to, that they're really going to want you to solve or deal with or tackle? Or what will be the thing that is going to be the greatest priority for you in your new role? I remember once I had an interview when I was working at a university, and every question they asked me was about dealing with difficult staff. How would you deal with a team who were unwilling to make changes? And then the next question was something like, and how do you deal with people who are resistant to change? And I got to the end of the interview and I said, is there something you'd like to tell me about the team that I'm going to be working with? Because all of your questions have been about handling difficult people. And they were like, yeah, it's a really tricky team and the morale's quite low. I took the job and I did take the team on, but it became quite clear to me that there was something going on here. And by asking the question, they did give me an honest answer. And don't be afraid to ask questions around that, because it will give you the answer and you can get an example, or you can think about what it's going to be like if you got the job. What is it going to feel like? Other things I like to ask about as well is, can you give me any examples of personal development that people in the team have had this year? Because if they can't think of any, I kind of tells you there's not a lot of personal development going on there. If that's something that's important to you, that will immediately flag to you that is something that's not in the culture of this organisation. Maybe that you don't feel that's important for you right now, but if it is, that'll help you work out what's happening in that team. And then what's the makeup of the team? How's it structured? Do you have team days? Do you have team meetings? Do people work remotely? How do you make sure that the team's gelling? Those kinds of things just gives you a sense of what is important to that organisation and what it's going to feel like to work there. If they can't answer the question, or they come up with something that sounds not believable, that is something that's not important to that organisation. So that gives you a really good indication of, if you got the job and you work there, that's going to be what it's like when you get there.
I agree. And I think in some interviews, they don't give you the time to actually ask your questions. They'll say they're going to give you time, but then it gets squeezed at the end. That's always the bit that gets squeezed. If you feel like you haven't asked all of the questions that you feel you need to, then you can have that conversation with the recruitment agent. And Absolutely. When the offer is made on the role, say that you'd like another follow-on informal conversation just to alleviate some of the questions that you've still got outstanding. It was really interesting because I went to an interview for a really senior role once, and I went into the interview and it was a really strange format. So normally I like it when I let them give me the spiel of what the role is at the start, which most organisations do. And then I use that to intuitively then speak about myself and pull out the key points that they've said about the role. This interview, they did the other way around. So they said they wanted me to explain myself and talk about myself. And then they would tell me about the role. And I thought, okay, I'll feel into it then. So I gave my overview. And one of the things that I would say people describe me as is I am a little bit of a disruptor. I am a change maker. I always pick things up that are broken. I fix them and move on. I don't do operational. I'm all about transformation. So either new things that need initiating and getting off the ground, which is always the hardest piece, broken things that need fixing, whether it's a program of work, a business unit that needs a little bit of TLC, a new business, transforming a whole business, whatever it is. So I went into this interview and like I was saying, I'm great at transformation. I'm a real disruptor. I challenge the status quo, and I'm giving all this spiel thinking I'm sounding okay. And then when it came to their bit in the interview, they were like, we just want someone who's going to slot into the team. We don't want someone who's going to come and disturb anything. We're a long-standing team for a couple of years, and we just want someone who's going to come in and do the role and toe the line kind of thing. And I sat there and I thought, this is not for me. If they'd have told me that, though, actually at the start of the interview, I probably would have, to be frank, I would have called time on it. Yeah. I wouldn't have even bothered. I would have just said at the start of the interview, I can tell you now, that's just not me. I'm not someone who you can put in a very operational role and just turn the wheels on something. I can't do it. It's not what lights me up. I can do it, obviously, but it's not where you're going to get the most out of me. It's not my expertise. So it was so interesting. And then, that was, I thought, I've got to learn a lesson from this. Even if they say they're not going to talk about the role at the start of the interview, I've got to get them to, because otherwise, how do you know? And when you've been in your career for quite a while, or even if you're early in career, you've got a broad experience and skill set to call on, and you can't niche down and say the points that they need to hear from you to be confident you're the right fit for the role if at the start they haven't set the scene for you. So don't feel scared to ask for a little bit more context at the start. That was quite a few years ago for me, quite a few years ago now. So I would say I definitely learned a lesson off of the back of that interview. But so interesting. I think you've given some really fantastic tips there. Really great. I think the other thing that I'd say is if you are feeling daunted moving into a new role or a new organisation, and you feel like you've done enough due diligence and you feel like it's still a risk for you and you're just not sure whether to take the risk, just know that you've got the power to change again. Don't sit in that. If you go into that role and even a week in you realize it's not for you, it's okay to say that to yourself and then make that shift. Sometimes your previous organisation will have you back if you leave on good terms. I've known that many a time over. So keep that, leave on good terms. Don't burn the bridges when you leave. Always leave on good terms, because you never know who's going to know people in your new or future organisations. And leave on good terms so that if it doesn't work out, you've got potential of going and tapping back on their door and eating a little bit of humble pie, and that's all right. Just go, and you can go potentially back into your old role or a different role in that organisation. And if that's not available for you and you come into the realisation that this new company or new role is not a good fit, then make the change and look for something else. You're in control. That's the whole kind of message that I want to get across behind this show. You are in control of your own career destiny. It sounds really cheesy, but it's not. Take that control for yourself, and your career and life, you are in control of the design of that. And it might not happen overnight, but you can pave the way through the little changes that you make on your journey. It will compound to you having that career in life that you want and that does align with your own values. Like you said, Tracy, your values and what you wanted 15 years ago when, or how did you say I was going to say your little boy then. He'll kill me for saying that, won't he, if he's 14? I've got a nearly 13-year-old. I do agree. I think the things that were important to me when my boys were little, and Phoenix is only 8 now, so he is still little, I'll say that. But it has changed, and I can feel it changing now as they're getting older, now that he's in junior school. So it is a new chapter, and don't feel like you've got to force yourself into the old ways. I think that's the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's really important, like you say, if you feel like you've made a move and it's perhaps not the ideal that you wanted and it might not be giving you everything, work out what it is you want to get out of that role. Does it give you opportunity to develop some new skills? Does it give you opportunity to have some experience? The company I worked at that I wasn't really very happy at, I stuck at it for a little while because I wanted to learn Agile and I wanted to see how Agile worked. So actually my focus changed from this is my job for life and, I'm going to love working here, to I really want to get experience of doing these things. Made myself a little plan of how I was going to get those things in this new role. And so that actually felt quite satisfying. Even though the company wasn't it wasn't a perfect fit for me, I could still get something out of that role. I was still contributing to that role and adding value, but it was helping me. And it was one of those little stepping stone roles that then I could move on to something else after that. So like you say, it's not like you said right at the beginning, there aren't any mistakes really. You might make a different choice if you'd known what you knew now then, but you can still get some value, you can still add something, you can still learn and develop and grow by concentrating on doing the things that you want to do and see what opportunities this is opening up for you. And it might be that provides you with the springboard to do something else in a much more fit for purpose company or fit for purpose role that you couldn't have gone from A to C. You had to go through B to get there. So there's always a way of treating those things in a part of a journey, like you said, and part of your career, rather than thinking, oh no, this is a dead end and I've made a horrible mistake and I need to rectify it, or I'm really cross at myself. There's always a way of working out how you're going to get some benefit from that and what that might give you in your career.
I agree. It's funny because one of the questions that I ask when I do the career interviews, when I get the career women to talk to their journey, one of the things that I always ask on the end is, if you had the ability to give your younger self a key piece of advice, what would you say to them to help them? Think back to when you're in your early to mid-20s, when you're just starting out and you're laying those foundations for your future success. What you've just said, all of that is great advice for your younger self. But other than that, what would you say?
I think I was ever so timid when I was younger. I didn't have a lot of confidence at all. And I got my first management job when I was 21, and I was absolutely terrified. I was managing these women in a bank, and to me, they were ancient. In my 21-year-old eyes, they felt ancient. To my 55-year-old eyes, they were probably all in their early 40s or late 30s. They weren't that old at all. But they were all older than me, and they'd all worked there a long time, and they had a lot more experience than me. And I was really intimidated by that, and it took me a while to warm up to the fact that people do want to help you, like I said at the beginning. And when you're working in a place, you know, if you've gone for the role and you've got a promotion or whatever, people do want you to succeed. They get something out of that as well. They feel like that's a nice thing to happen. So don't feel like you've got to prove against all odds that you were worthy of getting that job. And I think I was a little bit too, I'm going to have to do everything on my own because I have to prove that I earned this job. Just calm down and rely on other people, because they do want you to succeed, and you can use their help and advice. You don't have to forge everything on your own and do it all by yourself.
That's amazing advice. I also think that your manager, no matter what level you are at in the organisation, you will always have a manager or a leader above you. Yeah. I fundamentally believe that the person who is responsible for you as your line manager has a responsibility to help set you up for success, whether that's positioning you correctly in the role to other people across the organisation, helping open doors for you. So it is about asking for help of your peers and your team, but equally, I would say do not be frightened of asking for help from your manager, because servant leadership, and it's a whole other topic, but servant leadership is something I am so passionate about. And one of the key values of servant leadership is about really setting your team up to succeed and helping lay the foundations for them, because very often no individual can do that completely solo on their own. It is a team sport in any organisation. So that's the other thing as well. Do not be frightened to speak to your manager, because then you might perceive that they're more senior than you or whatever that is, particularly if you're early in career and, like you say, you don't have the confidence. Get that confidence, because they are there to help you. So that's my other kind of top tip. I loved what you said all around that, so I just wanted to add that extra piece. On the topic of your career then, we're going off piste a little bit, but I think it's so impactful. On the topic of your career then, Tracy, because you've had a fantastic squiggly career path like I have, what are the 3 things that you feel have really helped you on your journey?
Oh, so I think one of the main things for me is I always think about, what am I curious? Does this job spark my curiosity? Am I interested in it? Am I learning things, and am I adding value? So am I interested? Am I learning? Am I adding value? Whilst all of those things are yes, I feel like I'm happy in the role that I'm in, balanced with what's happening in my life. So most of the time I've worked in roles and then thought, I'm ready for a move now because I know this role, similar to you, I can't do maintenance and monotony. I now need to learn something else, or I now need to add some value elsewhere, or I need to be more interested. There have been points in my career though where I've had a personal circumstance that has meant I needed stability in my role. So I was willing to deal with the fact that I wasn't growing, I wasn't moving, because actually the other parts of my life needed my focus and my attention and my energy. So I kept my role in its place, if you like, and didn't have that urge to move on. And there have been a couple of points in my life where that's happened due to bereavements and things like that, that meant that the instability in my home life or my personal life meant I wanted that stability to cling on to. So I think it's about checking in with yourself and making sure, where am I at? What am I ready for? Is this the right time for me? And am I going to be growing and learning? And is that going to be a benefit to me? Or is actually, at this point in my life, is that going to be a detriment at the moment? So it's really, I'm big into self-reflection. It's really checking in with yourself and just working out where you're at the moment, and then deciding what you want to do. And I've always decided my jobs and my careers on what do I want to learn, and what's interesting to me, and how am I going to get that? rather than, oh, I'm bored of my job, let me apply for a same job in a different organisation for 200 quid a year more or whatever. That's never been my driver. It's always been my curiosity and my wanting to grow and learn and develop, plus if my personal life is at the right place for me to do that right now.
Amazing. I knew you'd have some golden nuggets of advice in there. That's why I asked you that question. For anybody watching, if you've not noticed, me and Tracy are like so similar. It's just so funny. We are so similar in everything. We've had loads of conversations now. It's really strange. I think we've covered some amazing topics there. Thank you for all of your wisdom and fantastic tips and advice. You've shared so much, Tracy, and I know that it's going to help any career woman that is feeling a little bit stuck, a little bit lost, and a little bit apprehensive about what the future is holding for her. So thank you for all of that. For anyone watching or listening, please do reach out to Tracy. I'll make sure that all of the links to Tracy's website and social media are included in the show notes. Please do reach out to Tracy if you want to find out more. She has an incredible business, and mentoring career women and businesses is a key part of your business, isn't it, Tracy?
Yeah. Thank you. I've really enjoyed having a chat with you. And yeah, I feel like I've known you about 20 years rather than the 2 weeks that I've known you.
I know.
So really good. Thank you.
We're going to be friends. We're going to be friends for a long time now. I can feel it. That's the power of these interviews. It's great to share such fantastic expertise from ladies and from experts like yourself. So thank you so much for being with me and taking the time. And I hope everyone that's watching this has got great value from it. And if you want to ask any questions or put any comments, just put them at the bottom of the video, and then myself and Tracy will get back to you. But thank you so much, Tracy. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a great week, everyone, and see you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and get notifications.